Okay. And if you guys have questions, go ahead and ask them. I have that window open now, so if you have any questions for Phillip.
And you guys also. Yeah.
You guys, since our back is to you guys, just go ahead and speak up. What's the tool you're drawing with now, Phil?
They're microns. There are different kinds of like microns, a different brand, different. But what you want is to have markers that are waterproof, and most of the time, like people in the industry, that's what we use. It doesn't really matter what brand it is, like what exact brand it is, as long as it's waterproof. And I tend to like the finer points. I know a lot of the other artists like using the brand. You like using the middle ones, right? Like the 0.3 to 0.5s.
Yeah, but I'll cut them.
Yeah.
Keep drawing.
Yeah. I'm trying to get away with that.
This is what he's like at conventions too. They start gabbing and people have to wait for the commissions.
See, the fun part is watching my artwork because he's always pissed.
Remember, you're broadcasting to people. Don't say anything you don't want on a blog somewhere.
Oh, hey, Kirk, you hear that?
So these aren't you didn't cut these in any way. These are just standard microns.
Yeah, no. I tried to pick the finer points. Well, first of all, I'm lazy, and I think the finer points gives you a lot of room to build up thicker lines compared to using a lot of different sizes of markers where you have to keep switching back and forth from from thin markers to thick markers, and vice versa. So.
And you use those so that they dry on contact, so they don't smear what you put your hand over?
Well, sometimes, like if you have a thicker point, it's unavoidable where the area would still be a little moist, and you might still smear. And you just have to kind of wait for it to dry up. And the reason I'm using this, is not for smearing, but most likely because when you use watercolor or acrylic or anything over mixed media, you don't want. Well, some people might want the certain effects, but for me, I don't want the line works to be altered. That's why you want the waterproof type of markers. So whatever ink wash or paintings or and all the other things that you do afterward, it's not going to change how the artwork is going to look like, or at least how the line work is going to look like.
Now, are these guys pretty waterproof?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't encountered any problems with them.
Well, you're going to do washovers. You're going to find out.
Yeah. No, I've used them before, Brian.
What's your choice for paper?
I've actually tried a lot. As a matter of fact, I think my wife would know, better, because she orders all all kinds of paper for me to try. And the funny thing is, I end up liking the a thicker ply of the regular Bristol so much more than all this other watercolor paper. And I think a lot of the most traditional watercolor artists likes the watercolor paper because of the texture it gives, and it gives you the teeth. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense. Watercolor paper has a certain groove to it. I don't know how to explain it, Brian.
Yeah, it's texture. It's a surface texture.
So what happened is I don't like that texture, and I rather have a smooth Bristol board to work on because it allows me to do finer line works on top of just watercolor. So, I mean, it definitely depends on people. Some people like it, the traditional way. It's just that for me, I'm much more comfortable having a smooth paper to work on.
Hey, Phil, just remind people that if they type in their questions in the chat, I'll read them out to you live, and you can answer them.
In case you people didn't hear that, people in the chat, do type in your question so Brian can read it out.
With a
For me.
strange accent.
Exactly. And by the way, I try to do most of my line works up front. I remember there was a time where I would do everything the other way around, and Brian would just get so pissed because it's just very counterproductive, and I would do part of the wash first and go back in with line works and finish the renderings, and it just takes forever to get one piece done. But now it is, I mean, I eventually learned that it's a lot easier if you get all your line works down. You may have changes, certain highlights, you may end up covering them with, opaque inks or other things, but it's a lot easier if you draw everything and have all the line ready before you jump in and do your watercolor.
I got a question for you from Victor Medina.
Hi, Victor.
And are your pencils always so rough before you?
Yes. Yes, I mean, I personally, I think if I spend more detail, I mean, I spend more time finishing all the details. Most of the time when it's watercolor, it's not going to be exactly the same anyway. And there's a lot of things where I think when you do watercolor, you will try to achieve certain effects where pencils that can't do. And if you do that early on with pencils, it might not exactly fit the eventual look of the watercolor that you're going to be doing to the artwork. So I try not to do a lot of the finer detailed works on the pencils. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah. But normally, if you were, for example, sending something to Jonathan who's going to work on something or something, then it'd be a tighter.
Oh, absolutely. It'll be very different.
Meaning that if he sends it out to somebody who's going to actually ink him, not himself inking himself.
Yeah.
The name of this is not inking, is that correct? We're not yet inking?
No, he is inking.
I am inking right now. I'm drawing the just the line works. Usually a traditional inker would make sure that they finish most of the texture of a certain area before they move on. For me, I mean, I can't say this is the right way to do it or anything like that. It just, for me, it's the easiest way to get all the line works done, so I can come back, erase the rough pencils, and start doing watercolor without losing my line weight. Also, another thing, if you do watercolor with all the rough pencils in, so do not expect the rough pencils are all going to get covered. And if you have an area that's lighter, the pencils will be there, and they won't be able to. You're going to have a very hard time erasing them after you apply any kind of water medium. So, for me, it's better to do this and be able to erase the rough part and come back and do the renderings after.
Looks like we got another question for you from Ryan.
Hello, Ryan.
Do you render the shadows with inks or watercolors?
It just depends. When you draw, sometimes like there are certain things where you plan ahead. There are going to be rim lights around. There are going to be kicker lights around and stuff like that. And depending on what kind of lighting you have on your drawing, it's going to create a certain kind of shadow, and that's how you're going to decide if you're going to ink that with watercolor or just pure black ink. A lot of times, like what I'm doing right now, most of the shadows will be rendered, with watercolor. There's still going to be shadows that's going to be done in black ink, but most of them are going to be in watercolor. But usually you would see where artworks that has like a very strong light source behind that creates rim lights and stuff like that. A lot of them are going to have a gradation from like this area. If there's like a if the sun is behind him and it's going to be very, very strong, then sometimes you would have. Yeah, that's true. So for example, if you have like a figure like this, then that's the head of the guy, And so there's a sun here, right? And it's very, very strong. But there's also another light source over here. What's going to happen is you're going to create a very strong light on what's closest to the one in the back. And how I would usually do it would be instead of just rendering the shadows in watercolor after I do all the line works, during the line work stage, I would start inking this area where the stronger shadows are in pure black ink. And depending on how I wanted the effect to look, considering all the light source here or whatever's going on around here, if he's got, if there's like a torch over here or whatnot, then you decide how much you want the gradation from this black area to the skin tone. Because you also have to realize that there's also going to be another a part of shadow over here because you have another light that's coming in. So, but anyway, it just depends. It's not like one solution that you do on every situation.
Well, it's really kind of what your style is.
Exactly.
Hannah has a question for you.
Hello, Hannah.
How important is line weight when inking a drawing? Do you decide what has thicker or thinner lines, or how do you decide? Sorry, how do you decide what has thicker or thinner lines?
Again, I mean, it depends. When I'm kind of like painting, when there's more painting in my artwork, like this one, line weight would matter a lot less than, say, something that's just purely ink. Because when you have a lot of grays and gradations and effects thrown in, you try not to, how do I explain it? I mean, it doesn't look 3D anymore if you have a very, a stylistic line weight to your artwork. Now, if you're just doing pure black and white, because everything, like all the shadows, everything else is done with just cross hatching or just hatches or feathering, line work would play a very important role because it will determine what recedes and what pops up. So the more line weight you put in, that area would start to recede, and the lesser and thinner line weight you have on a certain area, that would pop up more.
Yeah, and you can also think about it as you're going to go thicker in areas of the figure that are away from the light.
Exactly.
And thinner to the areas that are closest to the light or being affected most by the light. But you're keeping it, again, much more open than you would for if you're doing full pencils for somebody else to ink, because you want to leave spot for you to paint in.
Exactly.
With, right?
Exactly.
That's also why, because if you do really, really tight pencils and you're inking them, it's almost more like tracing. So this is where you've done most of the work.
Yeah.
So most people who do ink themselves will go rather rough, so there's still an energy there, and it's still fun rather than the tedious task of,
And I mean, one of the examples I can give is like over here where you see this bicep area. If you're gonna have to ink them, most of the time you would have to kind of, render everything, like from the shadows here to the feathers, to the hatches and whatnot, just to create that rounding figure, and the shapes of the muscles, or exaggerate the shapes of the muscles. But if you're painting them, you want to try not to have all those line works in there, because they're just going to look like patterns instead of texture. And when you're doing ink wash, that whole area would be just a gradation of either a certain amount of gray to light, or from black to light, and it would be completely different from here. So you're going to be using a lot of line works over here, while any kind of line works over here would totally change how it's going to look like, because now you're looking at something that is suggesting pattern instead of suggesting a depth of the object.
You want to slide this in there for a second?
Sure, absolutely.
So this is a Xerox of an Adam Kubert page from a, I think the first Hulk movie adaptation. You can see, since he's going for full pencils, how all the shading that's going on here is really indicated. You know, the line weights are really indicated by his pencils. It's not like Phillip doing his thing now that Phillip knows he's going to ink over, and he knows where he's going to want to put those in and paint and stuff later.
Mhm.
These are much more finished pencils.
Yeah.
All right.
So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
All right, you got a question from Marco. This is awesome, guys. My question is, what were your favorite issues of Spawn to draw and why? I'll let you go first.
I think 150. That's my first issue, and I felt like there's a lot of things that I haven't drawn before that I get to draw. And I don't think there's anyone in the industry that's not excited about their first issue of whatever book they're working on. I can almost guess that that's probably most of the time their favorite issue. Not all the time, but most of the time that would be their favorite one. I mean, you always look back and say, oh, I could have done this better and do that better, but like a lot of time that would be the issue where you pour in a lot of your, all your excitement, your hard work, and everything.
Mine was probably, I like my first issues, the art with David. I love working with Dave Pine. That was a lot of fun. I think that one and probably the art we had in New Orleans with Nick's was fun too. There's some pages I like there. But yeah, but Spawn was also great for me, and I think it was great for Phil too, because we got to work so closely with Todd and Greg, and it was really a great sort of master's class in comic book art.
Yep.
And Todd is such a master at teaching this stuff. Todd could actually he could do you a 3-hour lecture on all aspects of comics, including a 3-hour lecture on just
lettering. And
lettering. And I've had to sit in those lectures more than once. But anyway, yeah. But the ones I like, the ones Marco too, the one that things that I was proud of when I was editor in chief over there was doing his was bringing up Godslayer was fun. It was good to be able to bring out things like do the Art of Capullo book and other things that people would just had sitting around, do that collection of the Bendis stuff and all that stuff.
Godslayer is probably one of my proudest work ever. Yeah. I think that's where I started playing with ink wash, and that's when Brian started kind of like guiding me through a lot of the like redundant things I used to do with paint, and it really mattered because we can always be excited and experiment with your with your own way of doing artwork, but it's always great when someone who's been doing it for so long comes in and gives you tips and all that stuff.
That's his way of saying I'm old. So we have some idiot named Kyle asking a question. In your career, who are some of your favorite writers you have worked with? He hates writers in general. He doesn't feel like comics need them. But anyway, no, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Hey, where's Francis?
Francis is back behind you with a weird expression on his face.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun when, on Mutant Earth, because there was a lot of things that needs to, it was challenging, and to meet those goals, I think I really enjoyed the whole brainstorming and how the problem solving with Francis on getting those books. I mean, those issues of Mutant Earth drawn.
Heard this book that
Stan Winston.
Stan Winston came to us with. He was the Academy Award-winning feature guy. That's all sort of fun stuff we're used to when he's passed a few years ago. But to do, he had ideas for how he wanted to do. We had Mutant Earth and Realm of the Clock. And Phillip got to do Mutant Earth, which is big post-apocalyptic, huggy, fun, sort of heavy metal-esque character and stuff. Okay, let's begin another one. From Marco. How did we meet Todd?
That would be Brian.
Todd?
That would be Brian.
I guess it was me. I introduced Phil.
Brian was the
I
pick.
wasn't even I introduced Phil to Todd. I said, when I took over as editor-in-chief, I go, Phil's going to take over the book now. So that's kind of how that happened. When was the first time you actually physically met them?
It's one of the conventions, probably. It's not Arizona.
Yeah.
Probably San Diego.
Yeah, Todd's located in Arizona. Yeah, Phil probably met him for the first time at a show.
Yeah, San
Keep
Diego.
going.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna tell them
Okay, go ahead.
like this area. If I don't erase it, you see those lines that comes down. Because this area is not an area where I'll put a lot of ink wash or darker tones. Same with this area. Those pencil lines are not gonna go away if I don't erase them and I put down the watercolor. They're just gonna stay there and they're gonna be hard to get rid of and they're gonna look like patterns. So that's why I have to answer the question earlier. That's why I have to do all the line works and erase all the roughs and come back later on with ink wash.
Do you keep them at all, or you?
No, I completely get rid of them. I mean, sometimes you keep some of them when there's going to be like darker textures that's going to go over and completely block them out, and you just need them to make sure that you know what's going on or certain texture that you don't want to forget. Especially with complicated pieces where there's a lot of things going on, there's a lot of different materials and textures. You want to keep them around sometimes, but most of the time I try to get rid of them, just because they're not going to be nice to look at if you have watercolor on it.
And so you're using the white eraser. Why aren't you using like more of a kneaded eraser or something like that?
Oh, I just happened to have that eraser.
Do you normally use a kneaded
Yeah.
or you?
No, I just happened to have this eraser. I bought a lot of them.
What do you normally use?
This one.
Okay.
Yeah. There's no reason why I did not use the kneaded eraser. That's why I'm trying to say. Yeah.
But you've used the kneaded eraser and then got into watercolor. You don't find that it bites in a little bit more?
The kneaded eraser?
Yeah.
No, I mean, well, what do you mean by bites in?
Meaning that it takes the surface texture and it makes it a little less even. So you get
Not with kneaded eraser. With kneaded eraser, I think the problem I had with kneaded eraser is if the piece is a painting, even if it's just ink wash, sometimes it picks up the ink, and no matter how much you try to kind of like squish it around, there's always times where that part would just go and get on whatever piece you're working on, and I don't want that to happen.
What character is this?
It's just something I came up with.
Oh, and Marco, I met Todd at the Top Cow offices way back, like in 94 or something like that. And I was working with him from 95. When did I finish school? 5 years ago?
I don't know. So, can I just show something? So I
No,
don't.
you can't.
Oh man.
You can't speak anymore. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I don't usually have a lot of like procedures that like a lot of the watercolor classes and stuff does on when I see them on in Barnes and Noble and stuff like that. But what I just do is literally guess how much ink I would need for certain texture. And for the lightest one, I would put like 1 drop, and then I would put like 3 drops on the next ones, and then like 5 drops on the darkest grays I want.
So you're
And
normally working with about 3 different values?
yes, usually I would only have 3 different values. I don't want to get it too complicated.
You want some towels?
I do have some here. Thank you. And it's not a set thing. I mean, you know, you still have to go in. You have to try out how dark they are, and eventually decide how much you want for each value.
Is there a type of brush or a brand of ink that you prefer?
You know, most Indian ink works for me. I like using acrylic more than just pure watercolor because you can get like liquid acrylics.
Here, why don't you show
Where-
can you show the brand?
That's like my
It's tight.
So this is a Holbein acrylic
Bring it
paint.
down a little closer to the board.
Ah, there you go. This is a Holbein acrylic paint, and it's probably my favorite right now. I use it for inking, for painting, for everything. But India ink does work, so it doesn't have to be this. You know, India ink works very well also.
What about the brush you're using?
Well, this is just like a big chunky brush I needed to make stuff. But usually the Winsor Newtons are good. Just a regular brush. Oh, I can't get the proportion right. That's
okay.
yeah.
Don't,
So
don't do anything that you're
yeah, I know. But usually for the literal drawing process, I like using the Winsor Newtons, and I think that's also what a lot of people prefer using. This is my beat up Winsor Newton.
Is that a synthetic Winsor Newton or a sable Winsor Newton?
I think it's sable. I can't even tell. How do you tell?
More expensive.
Okay. Where's my wife? Yeah.
Was it like a $40 brush?
No, it was like 15. So maybe synthetic. Okay.
Yeah, you can get those series helmets and go dramatically. I have another question from Marco. Thank you for saying we're both amazing artists.
Thank you.
We're also, were we self-taught or did we take classes to get better?
You observe to get better, I think, and you practice. I think I don't. Did you take classes before? I never.
You go you do your thing, and I'll do mine.
Yeah.
Because mine's so incredible, I don't want to blow your.
Oh man. Now I don't want to say mine. But no, I've never.
Rosetta found me in the gutter.
Wow. Oh yeah. Well, Da Vinci found me. Oh wait.
Time travel.
I know, time traveling. He came back. He came to the future, told me I'm great, and then went back and told me that the Mona Lisa is fake.
Anyway, go ahead.
No, I went to architecture school, but comic books is just something I really love, and I haven't stopped drawing since 12 or 10. I can't even remember. And most of the time it's just practice and looking at other people's work and getting fired up that they're so much better than you are and say that, one day you're going to be better. And then that's mine.
Is there anybody who you kind of learned a little bit more than the other people you observed, or you kind of just?
Well, I mean, there was a time where I was hanging out with Will Portacio's group of students, and Gilbert Monsanto, one of your guys, helped me a lot back in the days. And then there's Brian, obviously, although he just bullies me all the time. But there's Brian, there's Kirk. Kirk's my art rep. He's not an artist himself, but because he knows what kind of artwork that people wants to buy, so he is very strict on all the artworks that I do for commissions and stuff like that, and he gets very picky and he pushes me a lot on trying to get the right look for any particular piece of art. But like most of the time, it's people in the industry. I learned most of the stuff I know in comic books from Todd, and Brian, and it's all these industry people. I don't know if there's any kind of like school I can.
Well, I mean, it's something that I think people don't think about if you go to conventions, one, you've got all these guys who are professionals, usually drawing at exhibitions, and for the most part, none of them care if you watch what they're doing. So that's a great place to learn. Also, at this conventions, which I'm amazed that young artists don't take advantage of, there are these big tables that they have original art. You know, all these best pages from all these people.
I know.
And you can just look through them. You can hold them in your hands. You can look at them like this. You can see what kind of paper it is. You can see what kind of tools they were using. You know, eventually the guy will tell you to go away when he realizes you're not going to buy anything. But he's not going to be rude right off the bat because he does want to sell something. And that's a great unused resource for young artists. You know, I really just see collectors going around those tables, but it's like, come on, you look at a Dipko, you can look at a Kirby, you can look at a Stranko, you look at a McFarlane, look at a Jim Lee, and you can really learn a lot just from, you know, it's kind of the archaeologist approach, I guess. You know, you've got the bones, and now you're trying to figure out how the bones got there. But it's definitely valuable. For me, I've been a professional artist since I was a little kid. But again, I try and grab, I'm just a technique, well, I'll say more. I get techniques from everybody and everything, and I love learning how other people get together. It's one of the fun parts of hanging out with artists, is that you go, so what do you use? Oh, really? You use that? Because everybody kind of goes at it their own way. It's almost not like any place where it's like everybody uses that pen, or everybody uses that brush, or everybody uses that. You know, everybody has come at this from such divergent places. Ooh. And it really is about kind of what I always do when I'm teaching is later on when I'm showing Photoshop, I like showing as many techniques as I can possibly show people, because what I always wanted when I was a student was just have something, I know what I want to do, I know the image I want to create, I just need someone to show me the different techniques and styles to get there. You know, it's like, really, is this how you work a pastel? No? Oh, that way. Oh, cool. You know, so this is how you work a wash? Oh, no, you work that way. What is the difference between watercolor, this is Hannah again, watercolor and markers when it comes to shading and coloring?
Is that for me?
Sure.
I'm guessing when you say marker, you're talking about Copic markers. Is there anything?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay. So if you're talking about any kind of like set markers, like Copic markers and stuff like that, what happened is it gives you a very even surface and texture. But unfortunately, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it allows you a lot of flexibility in changing the texture afterwards. And for certain kind of artworks, that works very well, and that's all you need. And as a matter of fact, for some artwork, that actually works better than watercolor. But just personal preference, I like being able to kind of manipulate the tones and textures and whatnot of the shade, you know, I'm putting down. So for me, I like the watercolor medium a lot better.
I think also the watercolor medium is a bit more, you can do a bit more with it, especially if you want to do more of a painterly kind of thing, like wet into wet.
Yeah.
Stuff. I mean, you can do that with markers, but it's a little more difficult. Markers usually, but the handy thing about markers is you got 5 markers, you just grab them and you go. So it really,
yeah,
you can kind of go faster a little bit. I mean, I don't know, I'm pretty fast with watercolor. You're pretty fast with watercolor. Yeah. If you practice, you get fast with them too.
Yeah.
But I always think of markers, and I've done a lot of marker stuff, as more, I always think of them as in comps rather than finished artwork.
I'm very slow with markers, actually, and I don't think I'm fast at all with that.
All right, we're getting behind the questions now. Sayar has a question. Aren't you afraid you're going to pour your ink accidentally or stain a sheet with the ink brush? What happens when you do that? How do you fix it? How do you fix a spill?
Well, now it's Brian's table, so it's fine. So I don't mind spilling on Brian's table, but no, I usually don't draw on inclined tables. A lot of people give me crap about it, because you get distorted artworks and blah 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 blah. But but I like drawing on flat tables.
I'll tell you, this is a gorgeous piece. Maybe it's because it's an inclined table.
I don't know, Ryan. I think it'd be better if I have a flat table. Now, no, as a matter of fact, I think a lot of my friends know that I would go to a coffee shop, I go to Starbucks or whatever to do my work, and I got really used to drawing on flat table. So, spilling. I mean, there's always the danger of someone knocking, your cup of water, your watercolor stuff over, or someone kind of like, push your table. But it's a lot less. There's a lot less chance for that to happen compared to having an inclined table.
Yeah, I mean, you can always, let's say you do a spill, I mean, the varieties where you can go back into it. One, you want some sort of really good acrylic white,
Yeah. Oh, mine's really good, actually. You can show it
Which one do
mine.
you use this one?
Yeah. It's the same
I'm
brand.
going to slide it in. Watch again.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the white that Phil uses for covering up and working back into.
Yeah.
But you can also cut a board if you have to. I don't recommend it, but if you have to, then you have to get back to white. And you put white board behind it.
Or you can do what Jim does. His whiteout thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean, this was my one. This is the one that I like the most because this one is so paper white.
That's exactly what he uses.
Yeah, this is the one I use.
Yeah.
And you can throw lines with it too. But yeah, that's what you have to. Yeah, I've ruined my share of furniture and rugs with India ink.
And India ink is a lot less forgiving too, though. When you get it on surface that you don't want it to because I think acrylic you can probably get rid of it with Windex. I don't think you can do that with India ink.
That stuff's there.
Yeah.
It's like, I often
Waterproof.
yeah. All right, let's go to another. Ryan's got a question. Let's see. What do you usually do to stay mentally focused for several hours working?
Starbucks.
What was the question again? Yeah, caffeine helps.
No, not the coffee.
Phil's a little weird. Phil likes to be around a lot of people when he's doing this stuff. You still do that, right?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. I more or less like being on my own. I like music. Music helps me through this stuff. I usually will have something on a TV going too, but something that I don't care that much about. So I'm not, dividing my attention too much. So I never can watch something like, oh, I really want to see that. No, it's got to be something I've seen maybe a couple times or whatever. Because then you have problems where you're like watching something, and if you're not really watching, and they have a silent scene, but it's a story relevant scene, and you didn't see what just happened, but it's pivotal for the rest of the episode or the rest of the series, you don't get now, why did they get together? Well, there was that scene back in there where they held hands. Do you remember that really thoughtful, and they looked into each other's eyes? Oh, I didn't. I missed that whole thing. But also, too, like Phil said before, exposing yourself to other people's work and other stuff that you like, because that will get you fired up to, do more work. We just got the new Spectrum just came out, and that's always a great one to look at.
Yeah.
And go, oh, that's really good. Whatever. Let's see. Still reading Anomaly right now. Thank you. I'm loving it. Thank you. When will the movie come out, and is it true the Spawn movie will come out in the next couple of years? Well, if everything goes right with Anomaly, it's supposed to be in production next year, so we'll see. And fingers crossed. I think we should have a script next week, apparently. And for the Spawn movie, I can't really say, because I haven't talked to Todd about it. But I've heard there's been lots of rumbling about a Spawn movie, and Todd's always kind of rumbling about a Spawn movie, but I think he's a little serious about rumbling about a Spawn movie right now. So he's got kind of a bone face mask
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yep. So I'll explain later on how I'm going to do the texturing on that one. So most of what I'm doing right now is just to get a good idea of, where I want a lot of shadows or where I want a lot of renderings and stuff like that. And it doesn't really, it's not really the set look of like the muscle or the axe or whatever weapon he's using. But it gives me a really good idea on what to build on afterwards, and like where are things that should go darker, and all the other things, and like where I want to put some effects and stuff like that.
Let's say you wanted to work back into the blacks you have in the back part of the headdress,
Mhm.
those black plaques and the feathers.
Yeah.
What would you use to do that?
White ink.
Just the white you showed.
Mm-hmm.
Are you gonna do some of that negative stuff later?
Yep.
Okay. I don't need to be on that. So you're originally trained as an architect, right?
Yep. I don't like drawing bathrooms and toilet bowls and all that stuff. I mean, that's all you do when you start. So, it's just not something I want to spend a lot of time on doing. Just realized this thing is in front of me.
Don't get it with your big bulbous head. Okay? It'll go out of focus and won't be any good. Do you guys have any questions so far?
Some of it reminds me of Japanese brush painting.
Sumi ink. It's actually very different. The way I wish I can learn that too. And it's if you ever read the book called Vagabond or Blade of the Immortal, that's how they do it. And those are some very delicate brushworks. I wish I can do that, but you gotta understand too. I mean, they have like 4 assistants, that works on all those feathering of those lines. Each and every person, doing those brush line works over and over again. So it looks great. It's just I don't think it's physically possible for one person to do it on a monthly basis.
So let's say you're doing a cover for DC or Marvel or something. Would you still use microns?
Yes. You would have to. Well, it's kind of funny. With working for Marvel and DC, because their mind is so set in. They probably don't know that they look for it, but they always try to see, do you have enough like cross-hatching in there and all these other things, because they're so used to seeing those. So even when you're doing fully painted stuff, it would still always look better to them if you have a little, line works in there and stuff like that that's mixed into your painting. So I would still use a lot of my markers, but I would use a lot more brush too, when building the blacks and the line works and all these things.
Yeah, but see the difference, folks, in what he's doing with a micron and what most people do with microns is you can see the different weights. Like if you look at the under part of that arm that he's painting right now, the nice thicker lines down there, the thinner lines on top. Look around the torso and bottom part of the character's left deltoid. You can see the shadowing in there, so thicker, thin lines. And that's what gives you the dynamics better. Not just one single dead weight line. And that's what most beginners tend to do. But they also tend to do, if they start doing thick and thin, they start doing thick and thin without any real reason. It's like if you look at what Phil's doing, even though it's a stylization, if you look at somebody in the room near you and you kind of squint at them, you can see where, if you were going to make a black and white, where there would be thicker lines from shadows coming in. So it is almost like thinking about it as a high contrast photo.
Can you talk about cutting the micron bits you mentioned earlier?
Let's see what happens.
I think I need a 0.5, right?
Yeah, yeah.
0.8 at least.
Switch that one. Okay. So this has been worn down. If you look at
If you look at that, see how it chisels off on the one side, like that? So you take an X-Acto knife, about 45-degree angle, and cut from the base metal that way. Okay? And that one's a little bit chunkier than what I normally do. Normally it's a little bit- What it gives you is so let's see how old this pen is. Yeah. So it gives you the ability to one go. So this is probably a 5. I can go very thin with it. It's cut, but I can also go very thick with it. You know, press hard like a filter. Not quite as wide as a full filter, but it enables you to get really nice thick and thin from the one tool. So you're not switching back and forth. It's something I learned from an old. He used to do all the all the comics for the
Los Angeles magazine. And I can't remember his name now. But yeah, I like it because I hate switching a bunch of tools. I like having one tool I can do a whole bunch of stuff with. That's why I like brushes too. I mean, you know, Phillip's less paranoid than I am with dipping his brush into stuff. So I'll use, sorry, it's written in the table,
No problem.
like a bunch of these new brush pens that are way, way better than they were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they were junk. The new ones are as good as anything, and you're not going to spill anything. And you can refill them too with your own, you know, whatever ink you want. My ink in the back. But yeah, so this is a Pentel one. There's the higher end Pentel one too. What is it, Sakura? What's that? What's the nicer version of this?
Sakura Pigma?
Is that it?
No,
it's the
Pigma
other-
is regular.
It's like the
Tombow?
no,
No, Tombo's
it's like this, but it's the higher end.
I don't know.
Anyway, it's like this.
Well, it's not $40 Sable.
No, it's not a $40, but it's probably a $40 one of these. So yeah. Yeah, you can even see it a little bit better on this 8. It's cut. And then unless you do, I mean, normally you wouldn't even consider drawing most common stuff with an 8. With a chisel, you really can get down to a 1 tip or less, or a 0.5 tip, and get to a nice thick tip from it. Don't be fooled when you're inking. This one works the best. This one is junk. All the other liquid papers besides this one, I've tried them all, are junk. I'll show. This
Junk.
is junk. Good. Junk. Do you ever work back into some of your blacks with something that's more dry and opaque, Phil, like a China marker, white China marker?
No.
You get some interesting negative effects with those.
Are they opaque enough?
So the China marker is. The other one not so much. These are also.
They're not those Jello ones, right? Gel ink ones.
No. It's a China marker. It's it's wax. It's a wax base. It's like it's the white version of this.
Oh.
Yeah, here we go. The white version of this. This is the white version of that.
Does it work?
Oh, yeah. It's not going to be complete coverage, but you can get nice. So if you want
Like
some
grace,
texture and
yeah.
stuff, yeah.
So you get you like a porous gray and stuff?
Yeah. You can't go anywhere without your sonic screwdriver. Very important. Jump. Now, some of the other things that you probably don't use, you probably don't ever go back, especially since you're doing wash, and do any cutting.
What do you mean cutting?
With like scraping.
I've been doing a lot of screen tones.
Yes.
That's a little scraping in there.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, though.
Well, scraping meaning that you cut back into
The paper?
blacks. Yeah.
Well,
You take a X-Acto knife, turn it on its side, and then scrape back up with it.
I would have to try that.
You got to do it last thing though, because
Yeah, because you're going to chew out the paper, yeah. Well, just one thing
You also have to be careful too about excessive erasing, because especially if you're going to do wash like he's doing right now, you'll screw up the sizing texture on the board.
Yeah, you don't want it to be so fibrous because of all your erasing. You know, one thing I've tried though is what Jay does. She uses like a dry ballpoint and carve the grooves so you can go back in and the grooves will still be there and you're not going to paint underneath the groove. And you just kind of have to go lighter and not soak it in water. So it works really well with like color pencils or dry brushes. Oh, that's not me. Why is it shaking? Oh, there you go.
I know we're from Marco. That's awesome. Loved your work on He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
No, thank you.
What artist inspired you both to draw?
I think, well, we were just talking about this early on, you know, when Brian showed me that artist edition from all these other great artists, and there were artists that, you know, I like and other artists that I don't like, and Brian was trying to. No, and Brian was telling me that, you know, you look at a lot of these artists that inspires you, and it's because they have, at a certain point in their career, they're teamed with the right people, and it makes sense because not all of their works you're going to like. So throughout the years, there are many artists where I like them during a certain period, but it's not like everything they've done I love. And I'm sure all of us has like long list of who inspired us to do comic books and you know and all that stuff. I think I'm a big fan of I don't know if you know who Takehiko Inoue is. He's a Japanese artist, and you know I think I'm very influenced by him and Kazuya Terada. Brian's the one who introduced me to Terada's work 15 years ago, and it left a really strong impression. So you know, even though there's a lot of other artists that influenced me afterwards, I think every time I'm in some kind of art slump or you know I'm trying to find a certain art voice for certain projects, that's where I go back to and look and say, you know, this is what makes me happy and, you know, inspires me and all that stuff. So those will be mine, Brian.
I thought art was just a great way to make fast buck and pick up chips.
It wasn't?
No, it wasn't. Let's see.
You tell me that after 15 years?
First guys I was more into illustrators first. So Bob Peak, Richard Amsel, in the late 70s, early 80s, there were some great guys. Thomas Blackshear, a whole bunch of stuff. And then I had friends who had comic collections, and they said, "Oh, these guys are great." So I had these guys who had everything that was out there. They could cherry pick the best, very best thing. Oh, have you seen this guy's stuff? Have you seen this guy's stuff? And Simon Bisley's Batman, Judge Dredd. That was what kind of got me very much into trying to do this stuff. Old Howard Chaykin. He was the guy who did the first original painted graphic novels back in the day. But really, I was always brought up, thinking there's always something to learn from somebody. So even if you don't like it on the whole, you find something that they do that's interesting. So is that going to be smoke, those little lines that are in the back, or what are those lines?
This one?
All the way in the back above his name.
Oh, it's the mountains. I usually just draw them last. Like things that are far away. I mean, if there's certain kind of like depth and distance that you wanted to do, most of the time I try not to. Well, as much as I can, try not to use any solid black lines to it, because I know like the concept artist community likes to call it an atmospheric fog that goes in front of whatever's at the back, and the best way for 2D people, like artists like myself, where we don't really have a lot of like Photoshop effects that you can use, you try to make sure that you don't put any really solid black lines into something that's really far away.
Now you already know, when you put that down, it comes down very, very dark, but it lightens up.
Yeah.
You already know that your head, you're compensating for that. You know that.
Yeah, well, later on, you're going to be, you're going to go in and carve out the shape or the texture of whatever that is that you want.
Yeah. This one has a bit of a Jim Lee feel to it. So
Really? Thank you.
I think it's the high cheekbone thing, the mask.
Oh, it's not the tilted table? Oh, cool.
No, it isn't. It's a super wiggly tilted table. I can hold that still for you a little more.
That's fine. Ooh, you're right. I do that.
So this is all, you've kept the same brush through this whole time?
Not this one.
No? You swapped?
Yeah, the whole time I was using the fine one, and because I needed to work on a larger area, so I'm using this this general broad,
Yeah. And again, what's the paper that you're working on right now?
It's usually just Bristol.
This is.
I think like if you can find.
Is this a 400 series or what is it?
I think it should be a 400 series. But I've found 500 series before, and they're my favorite, but they're not very readily available out there. You have to kind of order them. Like a 3-ply 500 is, for me, is perfect. But usually when it's just pencil and ink, people don't really need that big of.
You think? Oh, you're hitting the. That's what's going on.
Oh.
You're hitting this. So move this over.
get it out of your way.
Nice.
Oh, you can also, like, if you have something that's really damp, you can go in with like a piece of a napkin or to kind of like soak up the water so it doesn't like create the texture that you don't want.
There's also a technique for if you wanted to build up really smooth gradients from it.
Oh, I heard about that
So
one.
you just put it down, pick it back up with either toilet paper or paper towel, and so it's almost dry again. So you're ready for the next thing. Do it. So it's like this, two-handed technique, and you get it. It looks just like airbrush. You do it right at the end of the day. But I like the strokey stuff that Phillip's getting.
Well, I don't want to make people wait for it, but you kind of have to need for it to dry.
Anything else you want to work into?
Does the hair dryer work to speed it up?
It does, but it's all right. It's all right. Thank you.
Everybody just start blowing. Okay, so you'll use the brushes. Any other odd painting tools you'll use?
Toothbrush for splattering white ink. Jim uses calling cards if you want the splatter to have a certain direction to it.
Sure.
You can use some, calling cards.
Watch out, the one gets me in trouble.
Yeah.
Mr. I don't draw at an angle for.
I don't draw in an angle.
No, it's going to drip. So I'll talk a little bit while he's doing some stuff about, so let's say this is a cover for somebody. And the next step when he's done, will be to scan it in, and these days too, if you have a really nice photographic setup, you can do it that. But what essentially you need is a good grayscale scan of it at least 400 dpi. When you're doing line work, it's less forgiving resolution-wise than color. You could do a color piece that's 200 dpi and res it up to 4 times the size and print it out on something gigantic like that, and it will look fun. Black and white line art needs the resolution to look fine because it's high contrast, it's blacks and whites and stuff. So really what you need to do is you scan the thing as high resolution as you can. So 800 is not even out of the question. And then let's say you're just using it for a web comment thing or something like that where you don't need the resolution. You still have that high resolution version saved somewhere. So if someone goes, this would be great if we made this into a billboard, or this would be great if we made it, into something large, you're good to go. So you can take the color from when the piece has been colored and just slap it back over, res it up and slap it back over the black and white. Okay, I got another one for you. What's the best way to get into the comic book business now? I have 2 degrees in art. Should I build up a huge portfolio and show it off?
You would know that better than I do. There's no way I can answer that. Yeah, Brian would know better.
Yeah, the best way to get in the comic business now is to do your stuff, put it up on DeviantArt or someplace like that, because people do look through that stuff. The advice on portfolios is the portfolio shouldn't have any more than like 5 pieces, and anything that's really old don't have in there. What everyone hates at looking at portfolios when the artist says, "Oh yeah, you know, I didn't really finish that one." It's like no excuses with portfolio.
It's not my
hand
best
somebody-
stuff.
You hand somebody the portfolio. Oh yeah, the printed raw. It's like no. Don't say any of that stuff. You gotta be ready, and you gotta have something good. It can't be a ton of stuff because then what happens? Because half the time the people you're pitching to are going to be people who don't really want to be there looking at your artwork anyway. They're the low man on the totem pole. They're viewing portfolios because they got stuck with the job of viewing portfolios. So you really got to wow them out of the box, right? And you got to think of it too, like they're looking for an excuse not to hire you, right? So if you have 5 pages that are great and they flip to the next 5 and they're from 3 years ago and they're not as good, they'll immediately go, yeah, you know, inconsistent. This guy's inconsistent. Care about that. So just a few. If someone wants to see more, you can always pull out more. But if you throw in front of a portfolio, someone's again, the person seeing this portfolio coming at them is 40 pages of stuff. They're going, oh God, I have to look through 40 pages of stuff, you know. So you want to make it as easy as possible. But again, I don't think there's as much hiring done anymore as there used to be with people walking around with portfolios and shows. Okay, best advice for artists wanting to get hired at the comic shows that I still can't believe more artists don't do. Find the bar closest to the convention. Have your stuff there and buy editors' drinks.
Oh yeah.
You want to get hired? That's how you will get hired. You got to be good too.
Well, they're drunk.
But it helps too. But yeah, that is you want to be shooting fish in a barrel. There are some shows that's like New York Comic Con that's impossible to do because at the Javits Center and there's nothing around the Javits Center, so no one's hanging out there. But probably 8 out of 10 of the rest of the shows in the U.S., people go to the closest place. Okay? And usually that's the hotel attached to the convention center. For example, C2E2, that's a great place to do that at. So C2E2 is the Chicago Comic Con, and the Hyatt right next to it. Every professional that's in that convention center during the day will at some point go through that place that night. So they're all staying there. Maybe they've been out all night. They're going to come back into that bar to get a drink or whatever later on night down. That's what you do. But it means you got to do your homework. So you have to like recognize these people. So you go to the con today. You know, who's that guy over there? Or that's what that is. Oh, you remember that? You know, took Chris' photo. You know, so. But again, a lot of the stuff too. I mean, you know, there are more and more international artists in the scene because you know people post stuff on Deviant and editors and art directors look on Deviant and some of these other artist sites. You know, and you can also start, you know, really if you can be consistent with it and produce stuff, you know, on a weekly basis or whatever, and keep posting it, you can develop a following, which is really important too. Because then an editor will notice, oh, they have 5,000 people following them, so that'll be good for my comic, right? Yeah. So. I think if you're the bartender, it's harder for you to have the portfolio with you mark up. All right, so you're going in with white now, right?
Yep.
How thin can you go with that brush? Can you go pretty thick?
Yeah. Yep. Usually I would use a quill, though. I think that's the best way to use the white. Okay. But I left my quill. Yep. And the toothbrush.
That means we're getting near the end. Huh?
Yep. Oh.
So how, you want to show the people how much you put on there? Can you show, like, how much white you actually put on the toothbrush?
Oh, usually I would just, do that. And, just make sure that you check and it's not dripping. Because, I mean, sometimes if, especially with liquid acrylics, because it's in the liquid form, unlike paste, there's a tendency for it to, start dripping, and it might, blop down on like a important area where there's like a white spot where you don't want. You just make sure it doesn't drip, and go over the area you want it to splatter, and splatter it like that. So there you go.
All right. You're not really done yet, though, are you? You made it sound like you were done.
I am done. Just everything.
Oh, the signing is done.
I'm done.
That would be the embarrassing part. You screwed up just then.
Exactly. Well, thank you so
All
much,
right.
guys.
Any questions you guys have for Phil?
Is that how fast we roll over?
Now I'm trying to impress you guys. That's why I'm on drugs right now. Performance enhancing coffee.
That's when you, I mean,
Yeah, it's probably interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's very different when you're drawing something that you feel like drawing, or it's something you're comfortable drawing, compared to, say, oh, I got to draw the 5 cars in the parking lot where Superman is walking around, and all the trash cans that's behind the and the bench, and you might not want to draw that, and sometimes it makes things a lot slower.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, like, the perfect example of that is just picking up this, like, layup from
Jeff Campbell. This is from Gen 13, number 5. Is it pre-dry?
No.
Ooh, well done.
I'm still there.
And so Jeff would put 4 pages up on 11 by 17, and then blow them up, or not blow them up. Yeah, blow up each one of these things to 11 by 7. So each one of these quarters then become a full-size comic page, and then he would light box these and go over them. One of the most anal ways of doing a book I've ever seen in my life. But the funny part is, what we were just talking about with the figures, Phil.
Yes.
So what I'm pointing out was that he's just drawing figures, no background.
Ah,
Pages.
that's true. So did he went back with backgrounds afterwards?
No, not on those pages. He got really hit at a certain point for not putting enough stuff into his work for that stuff. Well, I want to say thanks, Philip.
No, thank
We're
you.
trading off. Or would you want to?
It's your turn. I'm talking
My
smack
turn?
now.
all right, my turn.
Let me go wash my tools.
I'm going to take your piece and.
I'll go for it. Yeah. It's probably still damp though. Sure, still.
I was going to do. I'll just do my own.
Scan it.
I was going to scan it and work on it.
Yeah, maybe wait for a little bit.
All right, so let's switch over then now from this part to, you're happy you're done. To Photoshop. Yeah. Let's see, so we can share screen now. All right, we're gonna switch over to Photoshop now. Francis, can you do me a favor and eyeball the questions for me? We get this all switched over for Photoshop rather than webcam.
bit more. Thank you. See if this lip's going to be high enough for me. You're not going to stay, are you? Okay. Use this method. Have you tried it? No, I haven't. Leave me alone. Okay. Thank you guys for all coming, by the way. Appreciate it. Phillip, got another question.
Yes, sir.
Do you guys design a lot of the characters you draw, or does someone else?
Depends on the job. If you're working for a company, most probably you're going to be, if you're working for Marvel or DC, most probably those are going to be characters that they own. And sometimes you get to design some of them, but it still comes down to if it's something the writer needs or the editor needs, and it's not something for just because you wanted to draw and design a certain character. But yes, you do get to design them once in a while, but most often you don't.
But you got to do, like, for example, all the orange lanterns, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And he got to design Godslayer's Spawn, right?
Yes, sir.
And come on, there's the other one. What else did you design that got made?
Everything
Everything that's good.
Everything that he is working on, I have to design something.
All right, so the technique I'm going to show is a hybrid technique. It's basically hey, I made it up, so at least I was the first to cheat. It's basically, when I teach people these days, there are very few people who've ever used an actual airbrush. Okay, and furthermore, very few people who've actually used a physical airbrush and have done frisket work. And that was one of the things that would depend on a airbrush painting be really high end. It's just gorgeous frisket work. You cut the plastic, you have the adhesive on the back, and you make shields and do all kinds of stuff. This style that I'm going to be doing here is basically using Photoshop to do all those things, and same as the real physical analog process, but the digital version, which allows you to do things much, much faster. And it gives you the ability to do marks that are much more interesting, I think, too. So let's go ahead. So basically I'm just going to be using mostly the lasso tool, Alt-Delete, which will fill with foreground, but then we'll also be using the airbrush. So I'll take, let's go ahead and not use this one. This is basically, move this down. So this will be, I have it on here, I'll make one, okay. So I'll make one from scratch. So this is just going to basically be a big, soft, round airbrush. Okay? It doesn't need to be quite that big. And then we're going to have no shape dynamics on. We're just going to have transfer on. Now, if you notice down here in the brush profile, by default, it will have my pen pressure. If you're doing this stuff digitally, you have to have a tablet in some way, shape, or form. Normally, I work on Cintiqs, but because we're doing this broadcast thing, I am working on a little bamboo tablet in my lap. You want to have both of these on, the flow and not flow, but the opacity generator, and the flow generator. So you notice how now it's a smoother gradient than it was before in the brush profile, so I'll take it back off again. So if you really want to have control with pressure. So this is just like a regular, real airbrush. You can use the controls on the side of the regular airbrush to control that. I'm going to use pressure to control that. And the kind of marks you can get. So the advantage is really being able to do really beautiful sort of brisket shapes. So you can just do, I'm holding shift, so I'm going to do a multiple of them, right? And I'm just going to go a little abstract here to begin with. Then you can hide them. D will take me back to my brush. I'm going to go to a lighter color. Go to a bigger brush. Okay, so I just have the shapes now. Now if I want to start delineating those shapes even more, I'm just realizing that we unplugged the mic when we, are we still getting mic? Can you guys still hear me? Tell me in the question, not you guys. The virtual guys. Okay, just wanted to make sure. I just realized that I unplugged the camera that had the microphone on it. And obviously must have been smarter than me and shifted over. So I'm going to go ahead and make some more delineated shapes here. This is CS6. And again, I can just very lightly go into the shape, bring it back out. You can go back in and start sculpting shapes a little bit more. I'm going to cut back into this shape. I'm hiding. I'm going to use the eyedropper to pick this color in here because I want to soften up this edge a little bit more. And then I can just start going back into that edge. Control H. You can also, if you want to make an action for it, you can make an action for almost all the stuff I'm doing. So you can have just one key does a bunch of things rather than the two keys, if you want. So anyway, I'm going to start jumping back and forth with this a little bit. Now, imagine, so this is a technique that's not just used for painting. You can also use it for sketching and drawing and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little drawing and then jump back into painting with it. So I'm going to go ahead and get me a black. I'm just going to go ahead and start sort of, this is going to be a face. Terrible now, but I can always fix it. Again, part of this stuff too, when you're doing these things, is you don't want to get too fixated on doing things perfect. Okay, you can always fix it later. What you want to get is things that aren't going to get in your way. So let's say, so I did those brisket shapes. Now I can go back in, like I was showing before, with the airbrush and start, bringing it that way. Also, I can also. If I do Alt Delete, it'll just fill with foreground. I'll keep it a little bit lighter. This way I can now, since it's not full black, I can go back and work into it a little bit more and bring back some more shapes. So let's go. And what I like about it is it really can be, you really can make a mark like you really can't make in any other way. You can't make this mark, with a really conventional brush. You're really drawing the shape, and you can really get something that's more you. There is a bunch of noise in the speakers now, along with what you're saying. Can you hear that over there, Kyle? All right, so I'm going to hold down the Shift key. The Shift key allows me to make multiple selections. Are you hearing anything from me? Can you hear me clearly? It might be something on your end, Hannah. Yeah, but that's been going the whole time. What percentage is the printer done? We have a 3D print going on right now in the studio. 33%. 33% is definitely enough for me. Does it look like anything yet? All right, so again, I'm going to go B. I'm going to go darker now. And you can see how you start. It's kind of a fun technique in that you get like, it's almost like a little bit of a magic reveal at a certain point. Oh, look, that's what I had there. So let's say that's what we're going to, again, go and delineate the hair a little bit more. Now, the advantage, too, of having these masks like this in Photoshop, if I draw this mask once, I can use it again, or I can move it around. Like, let's say I don't necessarily want it there, I want more like there, you know. I can go ahead and grab that. Now I have that nice shape back out there. Yeah, all one layer. I'm not a bit. I usually, unless I'm doing some sort of like commercial painting for somebody else that I have to make sure I can undo every little thing that I've done, I usually don't use more than about 3 layers in a piece. So again, this is everything that's being done here is being done with basically 2 tools. Let's go ahead. Now that I have this base color for the flesh here on here, I'm going to go ahead and give it sort of more of a lighter mid-tone. Now when you're doing this stuff, you kind of think, where is my light source coming from? I'm going to have it hit a little bit more this side than the other side. You got to think about all the different shapes that are going on in the face. Again, part of this is really kind of blocking the shape out too. And you can go back in, like, so if I hold the Alt key, I can now subtract from these things. So if I really want to get like more of a designy edge on that part, I can just cut back into it. I'm going to go ahead and pick one of these lighter colors up here. Again, nice big brush. Now you can see it's fairly, at this point, stylized, but it doesn't have to be. Really, the more you go into these things, the more you render them, the smoother and smoother and smoother it will get. To a point where you can make it a totally photorealistic airbrush thing if you want to. But again, what I like about it is the ability to do great big shapes and then jumping back in and doing fine detail at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and render a little bit of hair too back up here while we're up here. And you can see you can start doing, really kind of watercolory overlays too. Like let's say I really want the middle part of this thing to have a little bit more. I'm not really caring about the edge on this one. I just want it to block off the rest of the piece. So I'm just going to let it go soft. So I'm going to, I just want to kind of get rid of those pure darks I have up there. So I'm just hitting it with a big round brush up there. Highlight here in the nose. Usually when you're doing this stuff, think about surface textures on a face. There are certain parts of a face that are shinier than other parts of the face. That tends to be our noses. We tend to grab oil a little bit more than the rest of our face. And let's say I want it to be, so right now it's not that shiny. It's a mid-tone with another kind of lighter mid-tone. If you really wanted to make something shiny on it, you really have to go with a smaller, hard opaque. That's the difference between like a Christmas ornament, shiny Christmas ornament, and a cue ball. Cue ball will have a big, soft, diffuse highlight on it, so that will let you know also that it's hard at the same time. A Christmas ornament that's very shiny will have a hard, small, little light on it. So if I was going to do a shinier nose here, maybe a little highlight like that. That gives it a very shiny thing. If it's a little too light, don't usually go with pure whites on anything that you guys are working on, but again, this is sort of a grayscale demonstration. I think we're okay. All right. So again, thinking in terms of the face and where the light's going to hit the face, everybody who's an artist should have one of these on a drawing table so you can look at it. Ideally, you have a table lamp like that with an actual light bulb in it as opposed to that one. And you can move the light source around so you can see what happens with your nose shadow and all that kind of stuff. It's incredibly, incredibly important.
For the people that are listening, if you just pulled up a mirror, by the way.
I pulled up a mirror, by the way. That's what I did. A little cheapo mirror you can get, anywhere. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead. Same sort of philosophy, adding a little more detail. I don't need, I'm only LP, I'm going to get rid of the nose shine, so I don't need that in here. Grab one of these colors. I always find it's fairly beneficial to start grabbing colors from the piece itself, because then they kind of match a little organically. For example, you can sort of pick colors on these things and blend colors on the fly that way. So if I wanted to get a little bit more of a darker color up here, but I didn't really want to pick it from a palette, I just want to kind of blend over this area here, and now I have a gray up there that I can just pick. And that's even more important when you're doing a piece that's full color, because then you can really keep in the same color families very easily once you break them down. Let's go ahead and start messing with the eyes. So the other way to deal with this stuff is, so I'm going to do the eyeballs now. I'm just going to go in, do the selection. Yeah. That's because I held the wrong key down. Now, I'm just going to do, instead of doing a gazillion little friscuits in there, I'm going to do it all freehand, at least to start, on the eyes. So it's going to be a big soft airbrush again. The eyeballs. You have to remember when you're doing eyes that there are these big balls in our heads, okay? And if you look at the skull, you can see that they sit back in there. You have eyelids that come back out, so we go like in, out, back in. So generally, the eyeball is going to have shadows on the top from the eyelid itself, okay? And then you're going to break into the other things. So actually, most people's eyes, if you look around at everybody around you, and it's like you think about, I'm going to draw or paint eyes, immediately people start going for the whites for the eyes and all that kind of stuff. If you look at everybody in this room, nobody really has whites in their eyes, and for most people in this room, it's even hard to see any white in the eyes. It's like it's very much a sort of a flesh color there. The advantages you have by having stuff laid out like that is that when you start doing, when you start laying out this stuff, it gives you places to go with the highlights. If you immediately do what most beginning artists would do, which would be like that, okay? Now, the problem with that is it doesn't give you anywhere to go with highlights. Because you look at everybody's eyes in here as well, you'll see everybody's got highlights in their eyes from the reflectivity of it. Okay? So if you have white down there first, you're not putting anything on top of that that's going to overpower the white. Okay? So by having a nice sort of dark base here, I can then go in and start adding whites. Let's see, make sure I have my selection still there. So, and it's not really, again, it's not the idea that I'm going for whites, So if I start going in, I figure out, okay, so the light's coming roughly this direction. I'm going to go ahead and start, putting a little bit of highlights in there. Now you'll notice on these highlights, again, it's the very soft highlight, okay? If you really look at people's eyes, I'm going to come back in here and darken this back up, and darken this back up. So it's just going to be my basis now. The highlights are, I'm going down to a 6-pixel brush. Go back to the white. Then I can pick out a hard highlight. That's the highlight for a sharp, shiny object, like glass, eyeballs, things like that. Think about surface textures, especially too when you go there. I'm going to go ahead and lighten up the rest of his eye a little bit more. Not that heavy. Again, this is all kind of rough. But now we have much more believable eyes, and they're sitting in the back. They're sitting behind lids. You can see they're sitting behind there. They're back in there. But now by having gone that way and gone shiny with this overpowers that. There's no way his nose is shinier than his eyes. Okay? So the way you fix that is just go over the area, pick that next surrounding color. I can do two things. One, I can just go over it lightly and knock it back down, right? Or I can even just go ahead and put this into darken mode and just have it heat it up too. Then it's not going to hit anything. It's not going to do anything to anything that's darker than this color I picked. Okay. That was. I go back. I changed the mode. The brush is actually painting. So now it's just painting in darken mode. So we'll only darken something that's lighter than its color. Okay. It could be handy if you're, again, if you don't really want to necessarily cut that brisket again or anything like that. All right, so basically, again, I just keep going at this stuff. And just keep rendering, so I'm going to work on, again, we got some eyelids up here. So we got that shape, a little bit more. What I like about it is when you get like these kind of like flowing shapes, so you can have some little cheekbone stuff here. So it really becomes about this sort of French curve, kind of nice shapes you can get. So if I want to cut in. And what's great too is you can think about edges. So let's say you saw the shape that I drew. A little darker color. And depending on, and I got rid of my shape that I drew, obviously. I'll do it again. So I'm coming here. I'm just basically kind of doing that cheekbone kind of shape. And I know where I'm going to hit shapes. I'm not just going to hit that whole goofy shape. But then you can use it so, like, let's say I'm just going to use this side. So see how I can just start building up, you know, a total indent in his face. I can again do what I've been doing before, which is hitting the top part of it, but I'm going to let the base part of it fade. Again, now I'm just kind of fixing little things that I see there. So I want to make it a little bit darker in there. So you can see the subtleties. And how you can keep building that shape up. And then you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. And you can do it with color, you can do it with painting things, you can do it with colorizing things. Again, you could do it if I just wanted to do even like the concept thing, it's great. Because you could just sit there and like, well, concepting is when you're really designing like a, whatever. You start getting silhouettes very quickly. Oh, okay, that's going to be kind of an interesting monster kind of thing, Then start doing a little bit more. Oops. And then you can start going back in with now that you have the silhouette, you could just select it with the magic wand, and then start going in and starting to this will just be all just freehand. Oops, I have darken mode, and that's why nothing's happening there. And you start volumizing the thing out. This stuff. A little bit of an eye there. Start bringing back some more shapes in here. And back down. Then start working on, fleshing out a full creature and full design thing. But what's that? Sure, some of the design. It's a great way to do the design stuff. Also, if you can set up a little actions so you can just set up an automatic mirror function to it, and then that works out pretty well too. So you just keep again rendering. But I think that's the end of our webinar for today. Yeah. Anybody have any questions on anything? We're going to be teaching classes regularly starting in January. So there'll be more events here starting then. I figured December everyone's going to be busy, so we're not going to do anything else. And we're also going to be putting up this